All three of the examples under the theme of transitional moments were played in a tournament in Pula, Croatia, during the time that I was living in Slovenia. At a high level, there are a few blaring chess mistakes made, and it's often a subtle error that proves decisive. For the most part in this course, I've tried to use games where the themes were very loud, but the positions under this topic are quite subtle. In looking for psychological tendencies in your games, you'll usually be searching for subtle clues like the ones I'm about to discuss. The way that my difficulty with transitions happened to articulate itself in my games was in the move after my opening knowledge ran out. I tried to keep on playing without thinking, as if I was still in the protected waters of analysis. Let's take a look. My opponent was a strong FIDE master named Lazovic. Pula, Croatia, 1997. The opening was e4, e5. I was white. Knight f3, knight c6. I also play the Italian, but in this game chose the four knights. Knight c3, knight f6, g3. He played d5, e takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop g2. This is all quite well known. Knight takes c3, b takes c3, bishop d6. And I castled, and he castled. A completely benign position, you would think. Now, I just started to play this opening, and I didn't know all the ins and outs of the move orders. But I knew the basic ideas, and I was in the beginning stages of my learning of an opening. I knew that the next two moves were to play rook e1 and rook b1 for me, activate my rooks, take two open files, pressure his center, and his b7 point. I knew that was the idea for white. But what I didn't remember specifically was what order in which to make those moves. Now, it's a very, very simple question. You would think that the stakes for such a question would not be so high. But in fact, the stakes were pretty high. What would you do? It's not that hard. The question is, should I play rook e1 first or rook b1 first? The answer is pretty straightforward. Rook b1 is the correct move because it makes it more difficult for him to develop his pieces. His bishop on c8 can't move because the pawn on b7 is under attack. And if he plays rook b8, then after rook e1, when he moves his bishop, he'll have lost a move with rook b8, and white has a constant pressure on the b7 point that his rook is pinned down to. If he doesn't play rook b8, then his b7 pawn is under attack. So rook b1 is the correct move. It would be very easy for me to see that if he plays e4, then after knight d4, his pawn is overextended, and white's game is very good. So all I would have had to do in this position was say to myself, now it's time to think. But because of what I described in my essay, that at this time in my life I was having a little bit of difficulty with the transition in my life when I first got to a new country or a new place because I was traveling so much, or in the chess games, and in this example, in the moment in which my exact knowledge of the opening ran out, I had trouble making the transition from just playing moves from knowledge into thinking. And so I played rook e1, which is the imprecise move order, and you'll see very quickly how my opponent got the initiative. He played bishop g4, which simply should not be possible if I played correctly. And after h3, bishop h5, I have a real problem because his next move is going to be if I play rook b1, he'll play f5. Very strong in the center on the king side, and I'm not threatening the b7 pawn because he can play e4 next. So suddenly my opponent can take the initiative. Here I made the double-edged decision. I clicked into the game of playing g4, and after bishop g6, then I played rook b1. After rook b1, he played f5. He had the very interesting possibility of playing e4 first. And after knight d4, knight takes d4, c takes d4, queen h4. This was how he could have taken advantage of my move order mistake. And after rook takes b7, f5, I'm up a pawn, but black has a dangerous initiative on the king side. Instead, he tried f5, and my position got quite dangerous. I played d3, f takes g4, h takes g4. And from this point, I outplayed him. He played e4, I played bishop g5, queen d7. Bishop e7 would have been a little better. And after queen d7, knight h4, I took over the initiative. After queen f7, bishop e3, you see I have pressure on his bishop and I'm going to win it. And the two bishops are very important in this type of game. E takes d3, c takes d3. Queen f6, and now I took his bishop, he took back, and I played bishop e4. I took over the advantage with white, and I ended up winning the game. So, I was able to make the recovery. And you see how in the normal chess game I was a much stronger player than my opponent, and I outplayed him without much difficulty and won this game. But I gave myself a big scare. I gave him a real chance to get a big initiative with the black pieces. Why? Because in that moment, between just playing moves from analysis and playing a chess game, seriously responding to each and every move that he made, I had a gap. And in that transitional moment, I caused myself trouble.